It shall be proved in this court, and proved beyond any reasonable doubt, that this painting by one William Dobell does not qualify within the true and valid definitions of a portrait. It shall be proved that, in fact, this exhibit, this painting is not a portrait at all. It shall be proved that it is nothing but a caricature, created possibly by a competent craftsman. Your Honor, gentlemen of the jury, it shall be proved that it cannot justifiably merit the ultimate acknowledgement for a portrait artist, the Archibald Prize.
But the Archibald Prize did go to William Dobell. That was in 1944. The two unsuccessful exhibitors who took legal action against the trustees of the National Art Gallery of New South Wales over their decision were Mary Edwards and Joseph Walensky. They could not have foreseen the future, the effect of the case on Dobell and on Australian art. Dobell was to win 2 more Archibalds, other laurels, a knighthood, and the richest Australian art prize, the Britannica Australia Award, $10,000 and a gold medal.
In July 1964, Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated announced that it had established an Australian award scheme for outstanding cultural and scientific achievement in 5 fields of creative endeavor: art, education, literature, medicine, and science.
Mr. Leonard, ladies and gentlemen, the committee announces William Dobell as the recipient of the 5,000 award for the inaugural year 1964. Bill Dobell, like many creative artists, has received both opprobrium and praise during the long and dedicated application and development of his art. He has remained unshaken in the path he has chosen, ever ready to praise and help his fellow artists in their most widely differing and divergent statements. By his steadfast example and his quiet insistence on the professional status of the painter, he has significantly helped to establish the Australian artist as an integral part of our community. Dobell's painting and his name are now indelibly woven into the fabric of Australian life, and in his 65th year, we all join in recognition of the great contribution he has made to art in Australia.
I invite Mr. William Dobell to come forward and receive his award from the chairman.
William Dobell for his outstanding contribution to art in Australia.
Today, the artist lives and works at Wangi. It is a small, quiet town on the shores of Lake Macquarie near Newcastle, New South Wales, where he was born 66 years ago. It was to this house he escaped after the notorious court case, a man sick in body and soul. His recovery was slow and painful. Even now, he is a retiring, shy man. On receiving a major award 2 years ago, Dobell said, "Everything seems to come too late in life." What kind of life has it been? Writer and interviewer Gabriel Carr has known the artist for years. He went to Wangi to find out.
Bill, do you mind if I take my jacket off?
No, not in the least.
I see you've got your sleeves rolled up, ready to work.
Oh, yes. Always work with them rolled up.
Bill, do you still work every day?
I try to, as much as possible. I can't always get at it, you know.
When did you first develop an interest in sketching?
I've always been interested. I can't remember when I was not interested, even as a boy, you know, but I was no good at it, had no tuition. But always at school I was trying to draw. But it wasn't until I went to Sydney in 1924 that I went to an art school and began taking night classes. I wanted to become a cartoonist. And old Sir Julian Ashton took an interest in my drawing and advised me to, you know, go in for painting, learn oil painting, which I hadn't considered. And I got to like it. I used to go every Saturday afternoon and gradually got to like it very much. Got a scholarship in 1929 as a result of that, the travelling scholarship, the New South Wales travelling scholarship.
Bill, when did you paint your very first portrait?
Oh, I think I'd be about 26 or 27 when I painted that. It was of an old man, a professional model at Julian Ashton's school. I could show it to you if you like. It's
yes, please. I'd like to see that.
Dobell painted his first portrait when he was 25. He didn't know at the time that it was a major milestone in his life and in the history of Australian art.
Tell me, I don't want to hold you up for too long. Do you mind if I just stand here and talk to you while you work?
Not in the least, no. I'm just trying to work out a composition of New Guinea natives on scaffold. It's a bit of a mess at present, but I like to search for my figures. I really myself don't know what's going to happen, but I hope it will turn out to be a composition of individual natives on a scaffold and one of the women followers just lying there. It doesn't look like it at present, but I can see it myself. And I'm searching all the time for a line and a shape of a man on a scaffold.
It was in 1929 that you won a travelling scholarship to London. How much did that mean to you at the time?
It meant a tremendous amount. I'd always wanted to go to London to the Slade School. Henry Thompson, Wilson Steer were teaching there, and I wanted to get the benefit of their knowledge. They were marvellous teachers.
Bill, is it true that you had some very lean years in London?
Oh, that's quite true, but most people in those days did. I was not the only one. I was more fortunate than most because for the first few years I had my scholarship. But it was the years of the Depression, and well, there's so many people having a hard time. I was really far from being the only person.
Could you sell any paintings in those days?
No, I hadn't made any effort to do that, but I was trying to get work. I used to do crowd work on films, but they were few and far between. I'd get a job about every few months, you know, just for a few bob an hour, which would last. Well, you get one job today, and then you'd have to live on that for about a month before you're called in for another job.
Were you at that stage already developing a keen interest in portraiture?
Not portraiture as such, but characterization. I never wanted to be a portrait painter, not a professional portrait painter. I wanted to characterize people and choose my subjects more or less in the way of Modigliani and people like that. They could never say they were professional portrait painters. But they did get a characterization, which I still try to do, but unfortunately people try to get me to paint commissions, and there's nothing I dislike more than portrait commissions, because when you accept a commission, you accept a boss, and I don't like bosses at all.
You did come under the influence of the Dutch masters in those days, Bill, didn't you?
Yes, Rembrandt in particular. I was fascinated with particularly his later paintings, his oils, his feeling of sculpture, and his drawings. And he got a great plasticity, and they seem to come out from the canvas. That is his later paintings. His earlier ones didn't appeal to me so very much. Not that I think Rembrandt would worry about that, but his drawings and his later portrait groups, I was fascinated with those, and one or two of his smaller ones. And then in France, I fell for Renoir. Daumier, Rembrandt, and Goya and Renoir, I would take those four men in that form, my influences.
Bill, when did you first start selling your own works?
Oh, it was not till I returned to Australia early in the 40s. I exhibited at the Society of Artists, and I think a picture called the Irish Youth, and it caused some interest, and then clients began asking me to do portraits. Well, I didn't regard that as a portrait. It was just what I was mentioning before, a character study. And when you have all your own way, choose your own subject and do a character, that's different to be told to do something of a businessman. You just can't get the same feeling into it.
Dobell has had a long association with the National Art Gallery of New South Wales. Its director, Hal Missingham, knew him well during those Helican London years. So did another major artist, Donald Friend.
Donald, you remember those days in London, the Depression days there. What were you and Bill doing then?
Oh, Bill was living on the scholarship, and I was living on my wits, like most of the other painters around. Well, I remember Bill first in those days when he lived about 100 yards down the street from me in Pimlico. And, you know, he's a very shy, diffident sort of a person. Very hard to get to know at first, you know. As a matter of fact, I'd known him for about, well, it must have been about 2 months before he showed me any of his paintings. He used to keep them hidden away in a cupboard. And it's only when he got to know one quite well that he'd bring these things out, like, you know, the boy at the basin, the painting of the Cypriot and Sleeping Greek and so on, you know. Ah, yes, this is the one.
Was this painted in 31, Donald, do you remember?
About 31. This, I think, was the first picture I ever saw of Bill Dobell's.
Yeah, I know it was hung in the Royal Academy in 33. It was either painted 31 or 32. You never can tell with Bill, but it's pretty close. But we own the picture now here at the gallery, too. And how did Bill fit into this kind of local scene? You know, did he keep very much to himself, or did he rush around and be in everything and fall down, get drunk like a lot of the rest of us did?
A little bit. We used to go down to Negro nightclubs and all that sort of thing, jazz it up.
Bill came back from London then, I think, Donald, about 1939, 1940. You were back in 1940. I got back in mid-1940s. I think we were all together about there.
Oh, yes. Then he went up to the cross
That's
there.
right. We all went up the cross
And
there.
began
remember that marvellous series of portraits he took up there?
It was about that time, Hal, or about a year later than that, he began those camouflage paintings.
Yes, they're all in the Australian War Memorial now.
Yes, yes. They're really all tied together, that period.
Marvellous productive period, too, wasn't it?
And then, of course, this one over here, the big mural, was really what the culmination, wasn't it?
That's what is popularly known as the King's Cross mural then. This particular picture of Bill has got everything about it that stamps his originality. You know, it's got that tremendous movement and action through it. It's got very sharp juxtapositions from very dark, deep tones up to brilliant colours and brilliant light tones. And it's got humans in the best kind of wild way that Bill loves doing them. One of the great portraits, Donald, about this time was that picture of Margaret Olley, you know, that marvellous portrait of Margaret Olley done in 1948.
You got the Archibald Prize one?
That's right, won the Archibald Prize.
Well, in this portrait, he's got all that sort of gusto and vivacity of, you know, a friend, a fellow painter, a certain fantasy about it.
It really looks like a Renoir to me, always, this thing, you know,
lovely,
it's got that lovely glow to it.
Yes.
But another painting about, you know, quite a different picture, but another superb portrait, I think, was that early painting of Dame Mary Gilmore. No, that's a much later picture. The one that's really in my mind is
of the Mrs. South Kensington, yes.
Where's that funny old duck there that's the epitome of all those old mums that used to walk around Kensington leading poodle dogs. You remember, he did a lot of them. He's fascinated by them.
This has got his satiric sense in it.
Yeah.
Well, what's the story about the Bob Menzies picture, then?
Well, the portrait of the Prime Minister, as he was then, he just about thinks the least of Bill Dobell than anybody about the place, I think. He doesn't like the paintings at all. Never did like Bill's pictures. And he didn't like posing for this portrait either. Although Bill, of course, is in the usual way. He only gets a few minutes with him. I think he had 3 sittings of 30 minutes each for this. Not that this worries Bill much, because he's got a memory like 2 elephants. And he only needs to get a good, close, sharp look at a character, and he's got him. But it's tremendously like the Prime Minister in many ways, I think, and particularly if you look right into his eyes, you can see that shrewd, calculating kind of politician.
But Sir Robert Menzies' sentiments are not shared by many. Not even by the young, avant-garde Australian artists like Andrew Sibley, who talked about Dobell with Gabriel Carr.
Andrew, as a contemporary Australian painter, how do you view the achievements of Bill Dobell, the artist?
I think that Bill Dobell started something very great in Australian portraiture, in the sense that he's liberated the artist so that he can express himself completely freely. He can use his insight, engaging a sitter's character and personality. I think his I can see him sort of in the mainstream of great portrait painters, Augustus John.
Do you think that Bill Dobell established a specific school in Australian art?
No, I don't think so. I think his work has been is so original and unique that it would be almost impossible for a student to follow him in the same way, for instance, that Max Meldrum and O'Dargy have established a school, a method of painting. I think this is the difference between the school of Meldrum and Dobell.
In 1943, Bill, you won your first Archibald Prize with a portrait of your fellow artist Joshua Smith. It caused quite a bit of controversy. Can you tell me something about it?
Yes, quite a considerable amount. It took me to court about it. It was quite a shattering experience, I can tell you. And it affected me for years after that. I was dubbed as a caricaturist and was quite a figure of fun for many years. So I retired to what was the bush then, that's here in Wanji now. And I was right out of the scene for several years. And I was afraid to do portraits or character studies because once you've been dubbed as something like a caricaturist, you seem to assume that no matter what you do, you seem to become a caricaturist. You can't fight against. Well, I couldn't. And it affected my health. And you may not believe it, but it gave me very bad dermatitis, and I lost the use of one of my legs for a long while, and the sight of one eye, which is still not good. And it was fun to most people, but not to me. And I don't think I can ever forget the people who were concerned with it.
Dobell's agent is art dealer Rudy Common. Gabriel Carr spoke with him in his Sydney gallery.
Rudy, these Dobells you have hanging in your gallery, are these for sale?
No, they are from my private collection.
What about the painting up top there? It looks like Dobell himself.
Yes, that's the latest sketch of self-portrait by Dobell, and you can see it's still wet.
And the one underneath?
Yes, that's another sketch of Professor Anderson. You know, the big painting is hanging at the university, and that's the sketch for it.
I'll tell you something about the larger painting, the portrait of the boy there.
You see, that is one of the version of Dobell's Irish boy painting, and it is probably one of the most colourful paintings.
Rudy, I know that Bill Dobell's paintings command very high prices. Do you think they are still a good investment?
Personally, I think that they are still and will be always a good investment, and good art will always fetch high prices. You probably recall the last Shurek sales at Lawson's in Sydney, where Dobell paintings were fetching thousands and thousands of pounds. The public were thinking that's the maximum, and the Dobell picture will be never higher in price. Since the prices are rising and rising, and just recently a Dobell painting was sold for practically 10,000 of pounds. Dobell is practically represented in the big private collection in America and England, and his prize was established about a year ago when one of his little sketches appeared at an auction at Sotheby in London. It fetched practically 1,000 sterling, and since I think there were about 2 other paintings sold at Sotheby in London which were fetching far more than £1,500 for little sketches.
Rudy, how did you become Bill Dobell's agent?
It was a funny meeting in the old Usher's Hotel I had a drink with some friend, and next to me was staying Dobell. We had the first beer, and we had a few more beers, and we become friends. And since he asked me to run his business.
What is it like dealing with Dobell on financial matters? Is he shrewd at all?
You see, a true artist is never a businessman. And especially Dobell couldn't be a businessman. And I recall times when he carried a check in a pocket for a year without cashing it. And so it is very necessary that the artist works and has an agent who is fixing all his financial problems.
Bill, you're 66 now, still painting strong. How do you see the future for yourself as an artist?
Well, I don't look at age. You know, I don't consider... I am an old man, but I think in the art world, 66 is not so old. Titian himself, when he was 90 years of age, said if he could live another 90 years, he might learn to paint. But I just want to continue and try to improve, and I think I am getting somewhere with my latest works. I'm only doing smaller works, but from those I will take anything that I think will go up into a big one. I'm doing many small ones now, and technically, if nothing else, I think I'm improving.
Bill, after all the honors and success that have come your way, would you class yourself as a wealthy man?
By no means at all. No, we have a taxation department. It's the people who bought my work cheaply, you know, and not so cheaply, pictures of recent years, and they sell them at ridiculous prices, and they don't come under the tax because they're not in the picture painting business, or they class themselves as non-dealers, but still they're dealing, and they are the people who are making the money.
Well, don't you think that your pictures are worth the kind of money that people are getting for them nowadays?
I'd hate to pay it.
The prices, however, that are being paid for Dobell's works are going up all the time. He has never been a prolific painter, and his pictures, whether early or recent ones, are much in demand by both private collectors and galleries. His critics are few and far between, and even the ones who have spoken against some of his individual paintings could not or would not deny him the highest place in Australian art. Dobell's mother, one of his earliest sitters, would never have envisaged the future that was in store for the youngest of her 6 children. Dobell came from a humble home. His scholastic career was as brief as the law at the time would permit. The only talent he showed as a child was for sketching, but this talent was strong enough to overcome the most difficult barriers then and later on. Indelibly, William Dobell has put his mark on the list of great artists. Somebody once said, we could only shrink from a future which did not find itself reflected in his paintings. So strong and so deep is the humanism of William Dobell. Many of his friends and those who have just known him throughout the years were surprised when the artist became Sir William Dobell. Not because he was offered a knighthood, but because he had accepted it. Yet they know that with Dobell, they will never have to stand on formalities. To them, he will always be just plain Bill. No vanguard, no zealous reformer, just a painter of man.